And Hamas War Part 2. In my Part 1, I spoke about how the shock of this economic consequences not being oil actually transcended to actually logistics. How shipping was actually the economic downturn rather than the oil prices or the oil politics. This is just to tell you how fragile political and economic relations can be and how unpredictable outcomes can be when it comes to international trade, when it comes to economics, when it comes to politics and international relations. Now we're in part 2 of how this has affected Nigeria and Europe, especially the UK. So I would say that I'm going to break down exactly how the Israel-Hamas war and the Red Sea crisis has actually had a ripple effect. So that's where I'm going to focus on. So how has it affected Nigeria, Europe, and the UK? Okay. For Nigeria, how it affected Nigeria, I would say higher import costs, especially because of the shipping detours. This made things very expensive. Goods became very expensive. So when shipping companies started avoiding the Suez Canal and going around South Africa, the cost of bringing goods into West Africa went up sharply. So if you're in Nigeria and you're wondering, all those merchandise you used to buy, how did they double? Was it inflation and all of that? This Suez choke was actually one of the major factors that contributed to the incriminate hike in prices. So for Nigeria, this meant higher landing costs for fuel, higher prices for rice, which largely every Nigerian depended on, higher prices for wheat and also sugar, even machinery and spare parts. And this actually brought about longer delays at the ports. So you can hear ordinary market women say, oh, I'm expecting goods, but it's been delayed at the port. I don't know why my agent is misbehaving. Most of it wasn't because of the agents. It was actually because of this rerouting through South Africa that has made landing costs a bit more expensive, probably letting agents ask owners for more money to clear their shipments or containers. So you can see Nigeria already struggles with FX anyway, FX shortages and even high inflation. So every extra dollar in freight cost pushed prices even higher. So this contributed to rising food inflation, more pressure on the naira, higher cost of manufacturing and logistics. So let's look at the oil revenue. Even oil revenues didn't improve in Nigeria despite a Middle East war. So normally, a Middle Eastern conflict pushes oil prices up and Nigeria benefits. But this time, prices stabilized quickly because of oversupply from the US, Brazil, and others, meaning Nigeria did not get a revenue windfall. That means the government didn't earn more dollars and FX shortages continued. And also the budget pressure remained very high because not enough money. So instead of benefiting from high oil prices, Nigeria got high import costs without high oil earnings. The worst combination ever, especially for an economy who doesn't have foresight or is prepared. So Nigeria needs to always be a step ahead of all these economic issues. Everyone in policy, everyone in the economic sector, if you happen to be, the banking people, all of you that make decisions about how things work, about how finances work in Nigeria, should be at the forefront, should be able to predict some of these outcomes and actually have a way out when such things happen. Let's go to food insecurity. Even when it comes to food insecurity, the risk was very high. Not even only in Nigeria. So you see, even Egypt and East Asia were hit hardest by rising wheat the import cost of wheat. But you see, Nigeria also felt it because the global market became tighter and more expensive. So the rising cost of wheat wasn't that bad for Nigeria, but Nigeria felt it just because the market became tighter and actually more expensive. So wheat is Nigeria's second largest import after fuel, if you didn't know. So higher global wheat prices equals higher bread prices, pasta prices, noodles, semovita prices, all of this in Nigeria. So if you're wondering why maybe the bakery or bakers have been going on strike, or they said they wanted to shut down, this is like a preview to what actually happened or what is still happening. So with all these issues that I've listed down, obviously there will also be investor uncertainty in Nigeria. If you're just joining me, I'm trying to compare how the Israel and Hamas war brought about very strong economic consequences for Nigeria. So I'm at investor uncertainty. So I was saying that any global instability pushes investors away from riskier markets. Nobody wants to lose money, and some people want to observe actually before investing. So sometimes situations like this, or in actual fact, this situation pushed away investors because the Nigerian market became riskier. So Nigeria on its own is already seen as a high-risk investment environment due to many loopholes and systems and lack of effective institutions. So the war added another layer of uncertainty. This means slower FDI, cautious investors, higher lending costs internationally as well. So all this, if you were just in Nigeria thinking, oh, it was in the Suez Canal, what is our business with the Suez Canal? I have just given you a preview and a lowdown of how it actually affected the economy of Nigeria. So the people that might know this firsthand will actually be business people that trade, those of you that go to China and bring in investments, those of you that do imports, if you're a business person in Nigeria. This kind of gives an explanation to the struggles that you've been having in the last month, you know. But for an average Nigerian that maybe you just go to your 9 to 5 and you come back, you're just wondering, everything is expensive, bread is expensive. This is like a simple explanation to why these kinds of things have happened as a result of something that is happening thousands of miles away, the Middle East war. Anywho's, let's talk about how it's affected Europe now, especially the UK. I picked the UK because I know a lot of diasporans are here, and some people are actually Nigerians that live in the UK, and some people are actually British, that are also Nigerians. So it's good for you to see how, as a Nigerian, the economy is hitting you both at home and abroad. So how it affected Europe and especially the UK. I would say higher food prices in the UK in supermarkets, and this is very valid because the UK felt it sharply. Sharply. It was about 40%. 40% of food is actually being imported. So you can see the UK felt it heavily just because of this 40% of food that is being imported into the UK. And I'm sure to people who have not heard this before, you'd have been thinking UK is very self-sufficient. So it will be of worthy news for you to know that actually 40% of food is imported in the United Kingdom. So when Red Sea shipping was disrupted, UK supermarkets revised delivery schedules. So talk about Tesco's, the Asda's, the Morrisons, the big supermarkets, and retailers warned of temporary shortages. So if you've been going to the supermarkets and you've been wondering why your favorite brands are not there and you have to substitute to other supermarket brands, this could be an explanation to why that has happened. And because of this temporary shortages, cost of cereals went up, oil, like your cooking oils, fruits, and even packaged goods went up. And there was some form of rationing even at some point where you can't buy more than 5 cartons of oil, you can't buy more than 2 cartons of this and that in the UK supermarket. If you're in the UK and you experience this firsthand where your favorite brand wasn't wasn't on the shelf for weeks, and when it came on the shelf, it had to be rationed. Can you please leave us a comment in the comment section and just share your experience with us? That's if you live in the UK, or let me know anywhere in Europe if you actually experience this as a household or individual. So back on what we were discussing, consumers saw this and it reflected more in rising grocery prices. And there was also higher shelf prices for essentials like your tissues, things that are as simple as your bacterial spray, your what's that thing, the fragrance, your essential oils that you use to make your house smells nice. Those fragrances, everything became expensive. Even the more fuel costs was also, all these were all feeding into inflation. Another thing that I could say was a very big evident into how it was affecting Europe was the energy price volatility. So even though oil prices didn't skyrocket in the UK, gas and energy markets reacted strongly to the Middle East instability. You know how you think that, you know, uh, how as an economist or as a government, you are foreseeing that, okay, something might happen to the oil. So as a result, you have gone to make drastic decisions. So the reaction from just thinking maybe oil prices might be hit actually also brought about a form of instability. So the UK was highly exposed here, and the UK is actually highly exposed to global LNG prices, Middle East shipping routes, European continental energy volatility. So what does this mean? Households in the UK will continue to face higher electricity bills, higher eating costs, slow relief from inflation. So if you're wondering, why is the UK looking like it's suddenly depressed? Like, what is the depression everywhere? Why is everybody just looking for what is cheap? You're looking for bargain stores, discount stores, and people are not just buying, as much as they would normally buy. And everyone is just actually buying what they need and what they don't need, with more stores closing down. So this might be an explanation because of how UK is exposed in terms of the energy markets. So let's look at the business and the retail pressure of this situation that happened in the Middle East. You see, retailers and manufacturers in the UK actually rely heavily on the Suez Canal. They rely heavily on the Red Sea shipping. So Asian supply chains, that is China, India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, all these rely on these routes, and they were all disrupted. So for the Asian people expecting their products, for the Africans expecting their products to land in the UK, everyone was quite affected, whether you were a food seller, whether you deal into textiles, electronics. As long as that route was coming from Asia towards Europe, as long as your goods rather was coming through that route, everyone was affected. And this disruption, like I said in my part one of this discussion, caused higher freight insurance. There were delayed product launches, reduced inventory. If you ever walked into any store and you're wondering where are all their products, it led to serious reduced inventory. And also the costs that passed through the consumers as well. Fashion, electronics, pharmaceuticals, automotive parts, everybody was affected. All your Temu products, if you're wondering why the variety on Temu is not as exciting or why it's taking longer for your shipment to come, everybody was affected. Let's look at the aviation and tourism too. There was also uncertainty in that area where some flight parts had to be altered or made more expensive. So all your holidays, your Jet2 holidays and all those holidays where everyone experienced massive delay, disappointment, these things actually put, upward pressure on travel costs. So let's look at the broader European impact. That was the UK impact. Let's look at it, in a more broad perspective where, we are trying to also understand the impact it had on Europe. I would say inflation, inflation stuck higher for longer Like, England has a way of, the Europe has a way of, experiencing some kind of hardship in the economy, but there's always a way out. This time around, it stuck for longer. And Europe was already battling inflation even after the Russian-Ukraine war. So you see, the Gaza war and the Red Sea crisis made it worse by adding logistics inflation. So it's another thing to already have inflation in the economy and you're thinking more trade should be done. But even the trade that you're trying to get done is now costing you more in terms of logistics. So let's take, for example, German and the EU manufacturing. They were the most hit. They were hit the hardest. You see, Germany, Italy, France, they rely heavily on Asian components. So longer shipping routes equals weaker industrial output and slower economic growth. So if you were wondering, if you're living in Germany and you're wondering what happened, this is actually what happened. Looking at the economic side now, which I think we have discussed extensively, let's look at the political ripple effects in Europe. So I would say the high cost of living helped fuel. And helped fuel what is the question? It helped to fuel protests, union strikes, anti-government sentiments, immigration policy debates. So if you are wondering, all of a sudden, why are they saying the economy is hard and everyone is talking about immigration? Go back to your country. How did they get here? There are fierce debates going on in whatever abroad you are in Europe, and you're wondering, but we've been here, what's happened? This is like a contributing factor that has led to those debates. And this is why European governments were very focused on securing the Red Sea shipping lanes, because it actually directly affects domestic politics. So let's summarize everything we've discussed. For Nigeria, the Israel-Hamas War and the Red Sea crisis created a double shock. Higher import prices and no oil windfall. Very sad. But everything from wheat to fuel became more expensive. And even with the FX shortages, everything was already hurting the economy. So the war simply deepened the inflation. And you see, for the UK and Europe, the biggest impact was the cost of living crisis, which I can tell you for a fact because I live in the UK. So shipping delays were there, higher food prices, and a volatile energy market meant Europeans kept feeling economic pressure even long after the world stopped paying attention to the war. So while the world debated the politics, ordinary people in Nigeria, the UK, and across Europe paid the economic price. They paid the economic price. I hope you enjoyed this episode because this is what this channel is all about, bringing how these issues actually affect you, actually affect the household income, government, revenue, and all of this. Subscribe to the channel. Share your thoughts. Let me know what you think. You can ask questions. If there are any topics that you would like me to discuss, you can pop them in the comment section. Till I see you again,